Hello, and welcome back to Wired for Change, where we look at the technologies, people, and ideas reshaping our world. I'm your host, Amy Yee. Today, we're going to talk about transformation at one of the largest and most established ecosystems in technology around the world. Because transformation looks different when it's not at a startup. When you are operating at global scale, when you've got decades of partner relationships, revenue models, and operating norms. For many years, Cisco built one of the most powerful partner engines in the industry, a global network that scaled networking infrastructure across the world. But what happens when the world shifts from hardware to software, from products to outcomes, from predictable supply chains to geopolitical complexity? Today, we're going to explore what it really takes to transform not just a company, but an ecosystem. I'm delighted to be joined by Elisabeth De Dobbeleer, Senior Vice President, Cisco Partner Programs, who has led the transformation to the Cisco 360 Partner Program, which just launched on January 25th, I believe, a little over a month ago. Elisabeth, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Amy, and I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. I already know that we are not going to have enough time to talk about your full story because what a story it must have been. But for those of us who aren't as familiar with the partner ecosystem as it was before at Cisco, I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about what it was like before and then what led to this change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, you said it already in your opening. Cisco has already quite a while ago, in '94, Cisco decided very deliberately that all of our business would be sold through and with partners. So today, or over the last 20 plus years, we sell over 90% of our business through and with our channel partners. So we have a very established ecosystem, thousands and thousands of resellers, distribution, system integrators, and lots of companies that are contributing value to our customers. And we had a program which for the longest time has been recognized as best in class. So we put together a program called Value Incentive Program, which was launched again, I think it's 23 years ago as well, which has been considered for the longest time as industry leading. So we had a lot of legacy, very loyal partnership relations. So a lot, people business and very strong, loyal relationships. An established program, but also a program that over these more than 20 years has been tweaked and adjusted and changed. So it became quite complex. And that immediately gives one of the reasons why we thought transformation was needed in combination with, of course, what was happening in the market.
Wow. Okay. So one of the reasons for the change was because it had become so complex and such a beast. I guess. What were some of the other reasons for a change?
Yeah, and actually for the longest time, every year we would survey our partners, and the number one opportunity for doing better was always that we were too complex to do business with, right? So complexity or make it more simpler was definitely a key driver. But even more importantly, I would say it's our customers and what our customers are requiring. And we've all heard it before in the most recent years. Customers want outcomes, right? It's no longer about a single product or a point solution. It's really about delivering an outcome. And so we needed to make sure that our ecosystem was ready to deliver that outcome. And I would say that with AI and the speed of innovation and the agility required, that's even more relevant than ever. So the other piece was absolutely changing requirements from a customer perspective. And then more broadly, the market itself. We saw peers and competitors moving into more lifecycle selling, more managed services, more influenced revenue, etc. And our partner program, as much as we had bits and pieces because we had bolted it on or adjusted it or changed it, but as I said, if and that's probably the summary of it all. If you would start it all over again, which is what I often
Mhm.
used, kind of motivate the teams, right? If you would start all over again, you would probably not create what we had in place.
Right, especially starting over again from now.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
Yeah.
a lot of companies probably struggle with this idea of, well, do we continue to optimize what we have currently,
Yeah.
or do we start kind of from scratch or redesign the entire thing? Did you know already at the beginning that it needed a redesign, or was optimization considered as an option?
That's a great question. I think intuitively, because over these 20 plus years, we had been optimizing. And so I think there was a bit of, okay, we've tried that. It's not working. It's not agile enough. It's not flexible enough. It's not meeting the requirements anymore. And it's too complex, right? So I think all these things made that that was not an option anymore. When we started, and maybe that's interesting also from a timeline perspective. So at Cisco, we have the rhythm of the business and the way we engage with our ecosystem. There is, and we're still, I think, one of the few vendors who do this. We have what we call a partner summit. So, and that moment is like an anchoring moment in the rhythm of our business, and that always happens early November. So when we started this journey, which was around March 24, we said, okay, we have so many months from March till November.
Mhm.
If we want to come out at Partner Summit and say, we declare strategic intent, we're going to overhaul and we're going to move to a new program, we have about 5 months to realize this. So I reverse engineered that into 5 sprints, aligned with certain key moments. We had our annual sales meeting where we knew we needed to have messaging. And the first sprint, which was only 3 weeks, because I've always thought, and I learned this from a colleague many years ago, that the answers don't get better by taking more time, right? If you want to know um, what's really probably the right answer, putting a bit of artificial pressure works. So my first sprint was 3 weeks, and I
Wow.
said, let's design North Star. So I handpicked about 30 people from across, both experts, people who have been working on the program, the legacy program for the last 10 years, 5 years, sometimes had even designed or created bits and pieces of it, but also other people that I knew were disruptive thinkers. Even, either they knew a lot about the market or they came from a completely different side of the business, but I knew they were good thinkers. So I mixed those, a community of about 30, I think we were 30, 35 people from across, right? I had people from engineering, people from the business entities, people from operations, people from IT, people from the partner org. And I said, okay, we are going to work in these 5 sprints. And the first sprint, let's design the North Star. And we had a couple of principles like, we are going for an overhaul. No ideas are too crazy. Let's just, if you would, like magical wand, if you would start all over again, what would you build? Just to see what would come out. And that was, I think, very helpful because, first of all, it created the beginning of a movement, if you want, because those 30 people, we had it, folks had to sign an NDA, and so it had a code name. And so there was a little community forming with champions of change, if you want. And those 30, 40 people, they came together and they delivered a North Star vision, which we then signed off with executive sponsors. And then from there, we kept building through the sprints. And all of this was still NDA protected until Partner Summit, where we came out with the name of Cisco 360 and the intent to then actually launch, 15 months later.
Wow. There are so many
So
things
back
I
to
wanna dig into there. That was fantastic, Elizabeth. So one of the things that I wanna dig into is that team that you assembled, at the beginning, and you got people from different parts of the organization. You've got people who represent kind of the partners themselves kinda thing. I have something that I talk about on the podcast called the Digital Transformation Dream Team, and it's really about that idea of, like, who do you need on your team when you want to
yeah,
lead a transformation, and thinking through that process and making sure you've got the right people on board. And you mentioned kind of just some disruptive, thinkers as well. Is there anything else that you can tell us about, like, like the thought process around building that team? And also, was it hard to sort of, I guess you had this as a priority, so you were able to just sort of pull them out. You had that ability to just kind of prioritize, this is the work. I'm going to pull you out of like these other things that you're doing or these other departments within the organization as well. So that just
Yeah,
that
it's a
thinking, how
very
did that work?
yeah. There's also a lot of elements in your
Hmm.
question, but I'll start with the priority or the perceived priority. I think on the one hand, yes, my leader at the time, who was the channel chief, he had laid out it was a priority that partner program transformation was a key priority of the organization. So that was established. However, and I guess this depends on company culture as well, but at Cisco, which is probably one of the reasons I'm still there and I love the company, it's quite empowering and quite free, meaning the downside of that is that it's not because the leader says something is a priority that people are automatically just dropping everything and following that. So I think it was a combination of, yes, the leader set that out, but also I think it was really important to excite people around this. How can I say this? And it came to life as and when we launched as well, where lots of people said this was the best time of their career. They've never had so much fun, and then the pride also of being part of the people who transformed a more than 20 years old Cisco Partner Program into something new. So I think the human element or the motivational factor around I want to work on something that is worth my while, I want to work on something meaningful, I want to contribute to the company, I want to do something that people care about. I think that's a very basic need or human motivation. And I do feel that those 30, 40 people absolutely felt that in those first 3 weeks, irrespective of the leader declaring, because it was so early on, and also the process I used had never been used before. So little did they know that it would go. And as you probably know, lots of transformation projects get started and few
Hmm.
few few get continued or even finished or successful. So
That's true.
people get dragged into lots of projects all the time. So it's also like, how do you make sure they think this one is different? And I think I'm actually thinking about it as I'm answering your question. I think maybe also because of the way we went about it, people felt it was different, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love what you captured in terms of that internal motivation to kind of make change happen at an organization that you can really connect with within the team. It's so important. And was there any tension with respect to maintaining other priorities or ongoing kind of operations when you've got to focus on this new initiative and give it life?
Absolutely. Yeah, there was. And one of my learnings is that it's not a constant. So, and I guess this is maybe in big companies, this I would imagine that this is quite normal because things happen, right? Look at our surroundings and the world today. Things always happen, and there's always something else that pops up and becomes quote unquote more important. So that consistency, even if in March 24 it was very clearly a priority, that in June 24, in September 24, in December 24, in February 25, it continues to be a priority. That's probably the challenge, the consistency of, because most transformation projects are not necessarily complete in 3 months or in 6 months. It was between us starting and then announcing and then ultimately launching, because we took deliberate time. We can talk about that a bit later. It took 2 years in total. And so the ability to keep it as a top priority for 2 years is, I think, not that easy for a large company, because there's always things happening and companies have to adjust, especially in today's environment. And so that I think was sometimes easier and sometimes harder. And I think it's a combination of maybe me as the leader to not letting go, right?
Hmm.
I think I'm a lawyer by education, and I worked a long time as a lawyer, and I love negotiating. So I think my negotiation skills are making sure, even though other pressing things would come around, I had a way to continue influencing, continue defending and advocating, I think was really important. And then leadership as well. But I think you need to be, I'm curious what you think about that, but you need to be a little bit pragmatic. It's never rosy, and it's never, I don't, I don't think, especially in large enterprise, that you're in this rosy environment where senior executives declare it as a priority and then it stays a priority every single day until it's finished. Budgeting challenges happen, headcount challenges happen, other things come up, and so you're constantly reassessing and adjusting. And so, but I did keep driving. Yes, that you can't give up.
No, you have to be extremely tenacious when you're leading a
Yes.
transformation. So I congratulate you on that. And yeah, there is drift over time. And so you've got this tension that you're maintaining between having a project kind of last too long, but you still, because sometimes
Yes.
things last too long and people will run out of steam for them, or making them too short and not achieving kind of the desired impact. And maintaining trust with the rest of the organization is extremely important as well. So that's a lot to carry. I'm curious, Elizabeth, did you have previous experiences leading transformation that helped to inform kind of how you wanted to approach this one?
It's a nice question. Yes and no. I think if I look at my career now, yes, I've always been a change agent, and somehow I always happened to lead teams or lead projects or volunteer for projects that included change. I am someone who enjoys change. I'm not afraid of change. So I think in that sense, it suits my character. I'm also I enjoy adventure. I'm quite open-minded, so it attracts me. I like a challenge. So I think those things, yes, suited my career path and the jobs I've had and the projects I've done. But it's not that I was tagged as she's already achieved 5 transformation projects and now this is the 6th. It's not like that at all. I think I was just rolling into it from one place to the next. And I do think I mentioned it already. I was trained as a lawyer and I worked as a sales lawyer for quite a while. So I would argue that analytical skills, being level-headed, not getting emotional too quickly about anything, and the negotiation or the influencing skills, the securing trust, as you call it, I think were all things that suited this role very well and helped me a lot.
Wonderful. Those are excellent tips, I guess, and insights for others who are working through transformation as well. So thanks for that. Okay, so to get back to the idea of the North Star, I guess, what are the top 3 shifts that you were looking for with this transformation?
Well, first of all, I think we completely evolved the way we define partner value. So we really wanted to anchor on customer outcomes and the way partners are contributing to customer value as well. So I think that's the first anchoring thing. It's all about the customers and the way partners are contributing value. And then from that gets distilled that we shifted, and again, this is very much market driven, from the single transaction to the life cycle and contributing value along the customer journey. I think that was the second really important point. And then the third one, which I'm very passionate about, is the digital experience. I think especially in today's environment, again, where yes, we wanted it to be more simple, but in the end, it's about the digital experience. And especially if you think then about AI and data insights and all these things, that's something that we'll continue to work on and use as a differentiated asset. Yeah.
Interesting. And so I'm curious about how you translated that into the decisions that you made on a daily basis, or the decisions that your teams made on a daily basis. So previously, for me in transformation projects, sometimes I'll define, one of these shifts as a user story. It sounds like you're very familiar with Agile. So as a user story, for example, and so the how gets defined along the way by the team. Did you use something similar in terms of, making it a principle to ensure that you were always moving towards that
Yes.
outcome? Yeah.
Yeah. I like where you're going with that. Yes. So the idea of these sprints was precisely to drive us towards principles and the North Star. So the first 3 weeks of the first sprint was to define a North Star and the design principles. And so everything that happened after that had to come back and align with that. And I think one of the innovative things we did here, precisely because we had said it has to anchor in customer value. For example, we launched, and believe it or not, I still find it daunting, but we did the first time ever a marketing campaign to our customers about the value of our ecosystem. And it's been an amazing customer campaign. I mean, it overachieved all possible industry benchmarks, etc. But that came from the design principle. The partner program is all about driving customer value. And so then it made a lot of sense that we would shift our marketing to customers about the ecosystem as well and the value of our ecosystem.
Wonderful. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Okay, and then so you started talking about design. So I do want to lean into the design element a little bit and the whole idea of co-designing, which I believe that you did with partners as well. And so how did you get
Yeah.
started doing that and how did you decide what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I also, and it's a strong principle of mine. I feel, I believe a lot in the wisdom of the crowd, right? And I also believe a lot that in today's environment, there's not a single person or a single company that knows all the answers. And the more people are working together, brainstorming together, tapping into each other's ideas, the better the outcome. And so I was very, very deliberate about, I want to do this together, right? And so when we started the process, obviously because of obvious reasons of not leaking it prematurely, etc., the initial weeks were mostly Cisco internal. We did test ideas with very, think two hands, right? Partners over the summer, but then we went into a very formal co-design process as in when we had announced our intent to launch the new program after the Partner Summit 24, and we took 15 months. And so I used agile development and design thinking as inspiration. So we deliberately went into a process where we said we're going to release things. One of the things that was core to the new program is defining partner value along what we call a value index, which has things like managed services, practice maturity, customer success, the way they invest in technical capabilities. And so we launched the first version of that in December 24 for security. Oh, and we got so much feedback, right? And of course, initially, a lot of negative feedback also, right? Like, we don't like this, we don't like that, that doesn't make sense, etc. But we, as much as it was very vulnerable in a way, and it felt very exposed also because we didn't do it, I did it in large scale. I didn't do it with only 20 partners or only 100 partners. I did it openly, right? We just released in the digital experience, and any partner in our ecosystem could access that first release. And so we got lots and lots of feedback, one-on-one feedback, in-person feedback, email feedback, webinar feedback, anything. But the beauty of all of this, as much as we went through the process, and some partners loved it and some partners said, oh my God, get your act together and define it, and I don't want to be over with this. But then by June 25th, 25, we released, based on all this feedback, updated versions. And then we saw sentiment change a lot because they saw that we were very serious about, we want your feedback. And we keep releasing and we keep getting feedback. And now we are returning the feedback into changes, real changes in the way we've defined partner value, in the way we adjusted the indexes, in the way the experience went and all of that. And so then the summer before the last partner summit, which was then the last 3 months before launch, partner sentiment improved significantly, precisely because we had gotten rid of a lot of the bugs, the logical flaws. I mean, I always used to say, I mean, things that sound great on a PowerPoint may not work in reality, right? And it was never intentional, or we didn't necessarily, I always said as well, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right? It's we want to land a really effective program that is ready for the next decades. It's not about Elisabeth knows everything best or Cisco knows everything best. And so I think that was a key principle. Also humility, and that everybody always had a voice and we would always listen, which was exhausting as well. But I'm convinced that it was, I think that the fact that when the 25th of January arrived, it was very uneventful almost,
Hmm,
um, which was what I wanted,
amazing.
right? It be smooth and uneventful. And I think that's because we had fixed many issues already beforehand.
That's amazing. See, it's not going with that kind of big bang, kind of shock approach, right, for your launch. It was something that you had brought people along with on the journey the entire time.
Yeah.
That's super interesting, and it looks like it sounds like you were measuring sentiment the entire time, kind of from the beginning as well.
Yes.
How were you doing that? Was that a survey that went out every time they provided feedback, or how did that work?
Yeah, multiple. So we had sort of, yeah, multiple ways
Mhm.
again, because yeah, you can never have enough. And the good news I think was that, so we had verbal feedback, because our partner relationships are very strong. So we have partner account executives who would work with partners, who would come and tell us direct feedback. I would get, because I was spending lots of time with partners as well. Any webinar we did, which was typically attended by 400, 500, 600 partners, we would get scores as well. So we had multiple entries, and I guess the feedback was pretty consistent. So that's why we felt we had a relatively good feel on the pulse, because it's not like it was all over the place. It was typically quite consistent. Like the number one issue would come up in the one-on-one discussions, would come up in the webinar results, would come up in the analyst survey. So then you know, okay, we have to address this because this is an issue. Yeah.
That's great, and did you segment, like, different types of partners into, personas, for example, that you were ended up designing for based on their feedback?
Yeah, and we're still working on that. So our first phase was all about our transacting partners for obvious reasons, because that's of course yeah, the business that is being transacted. And so we were and within that you have the larger partner, the smaller partners, you have the resellers who buy from distribution, you have distribution itself, and then you have the what we call the system integrator or the one-tier partner. So we had those segmented. But then we are also, and this is one of the big things or promises of the new program as well, we want to allow a home for partners that are not transacting, that are influencing revenue, think consultants or advisors or developers, etc. And so we would have separate sessions with them and tailor to them as well, because we really want them to be part of the program too. So we did categorize all of that.
Wonderful. And then,
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell me about, you mentioned in that early kind of release, you had a lot of feedback and some of it was negative feedback, and which is great. And, was there anything that surprised you? Like, can you tell us, like, about an insight or something that you learned that surprised, like, the team, something that they didn't expect?
Yeah, I think there were things where, as I said, this whole thing about things that made a lot of sense in the PowerPoint, but then turned out to completely not work in reality because we had missed the practical use case, right? So we had things like that. But I think the thing that I found very interesting is that as much as the number one complaint, or let me put it
Yes.
positively, opportunity for improvement was always complexity, or better said, simplify further. Even though the new program is more simple in many ways, partners thought it was more complex, because there is this thing, the devil you know, right?
Yes.
Devil you don't. And so this thing about, because a lot of our partners are very loyal to Cisco and have worked with us for a very long time. So as much as they think it's very complex, it's complexity they're used to.
Mhm.
They build systems around. People have made careers on managing the complexity of Cisco's partner program. So there was that as well, which is a very human nature thing. So I had this funny situation where newer partners would be very excited about a new program, because they would say, yeah, this is exactly what we consider a modern program to be. We like the focus on managed services. We like the focus on lifecycle selling and all of that. But our existing partners sometimes had the hardest time, because it's a big shift from the legacy to the new, and it does require, just like us internally, to undo certain things, or to replace certain things, or to do new things, right? And so that's something you cannot ignore, which is not a reason not to do it, right? But it is a very human factor that people feel like you know, I've done this the same way for the last 10 years, 5 years, 15 years. I know it inside out. I can do it with my eyes closed. And now I have to do something completely new. And even if, technically speaking, I can prove it's faster, simpler, it doesn't land because it's different, right? So this is this human aversion to change, I think. I don't like it just because it's changing kind of thing.
Yes,
So that, yeah, you have to be very respectful of that, I think. It's a very
absolutely.
noble,
Absolutely,
yeah.
which starts with listening, which is what you did, and there are many different types of challenges to people's identities. I think when we look at transformation, I've spoken to people during this kind of feedback where like someone's entire job might be based on the old way of doing things, right? And so what
Mm.
happens to them, in the new world that you're building, and it is a very sensitive thing, and it's something that you have to communicate about. So for you, was there anything that changed, like your approach or the way that you introduced the new program when you knew that there might be this kind of challenge with identity?
Yes and no. Because I think on the one hand, yes, you have to have, at least my belief is the only way to succeed a transformation is to spend a lot of time on the human factor in the broad sense, right? So you have to be very respectful of people, of the aversion to change, of the reasons why people have issues with the change, right? Which is mostly around fear. A lot of it has to do with fear, right? Fear it's not going to work, fear it's going to make you redundant, fear you don't know how to adjust, all these things. So you have to have empathy and you have to accommodate for that. And so the why are you changing and how are you changing and explaining there's a role for them in the changed world is really critical. At the same time, I don't know if this may sound harsh, but I also feel, and that's something I've learned in previous roles as well, when you are driving change, you can not do that hoping everybody will be happy. So there's a part of you that has to accept that you may not always be the most popular person, and that it's going to be tough. So, and it's a balancing act between showing you care, showing you listen, showing you will adjust where it makes sense, but also being firm enough that just because you don't like it is not a good enough reason not to change. So I think it's a balancing act, because there are people who never liked it, still don't like it, and even after it launched, still are not liking it, right? And so I used to spend a lot of time and energy to try to convince them, and I kind of now I changed my approach. Somebody told me years ago, I think it was a coach, saying focus on the champions, right? So out of 10 people, there are two or three that are like, yeah, let's go. What do you want me to do? Then there are two or three who are not really into it and they prefer things to stay the same. And then the remaining people, as long as you can explain and give them a role and a part to play, they will come along as well. And so I think it's important to manage and assess that well, and to have a right balance of being determined enough, yet empathetic enough. I think that's how I would solve that, because otherwise you will never finish. I think you can be too sensitive, and you have to accept somebody is not going to be happy, and that's, otherwise you wouldn't be changing,
That's
right?
right. I mean, you can be charismatic and ask nicely, but at the end of the day, the definition of done can't be that isn't going to be that everyone is absolutely in love with it. Otherwise, you'll never get through the
Yeah,
transformation. I think
exactly.
it's wonderful the way that you've made that point, and I think that there's a real art to it. I think that you learn through experience. I'm a little biased, but I think that there's a real art to it, and so I have a lot of respect
Yeah.
for everything that you must have done to make it through the transformation this way. So we've talked about the human factor. How about like external challenges and pressures? I mean, a lot of things have changed in the last couple of years, and sometimes you have to think about how to is what you're building resilient or not?
Yeah.
How are the interdependencies? How do you think about that? Is there anything that you can share about your philosophy of like when these things kind of hit the system? What is that going to look like, or how do you prepare for risk?
Yeah, well, risk comes in many ways, but if you talk about the risk of being irrelevant before you've even finished, let's
Yes.
say, that's actually why I went into agile development and co-design, because I thought if you are too stuck, like I developed this and it has to be like this, and whatever I thought in March 24 has to be exactly how it lands end of January 26, then you're wrong, right? So I've always built in enough agility so that as and when things would happen, I could course correct and adjust. And the program itself is much more agile than the previous one.
Hmm.
So I think you have to build it in. You have to accept. And again, I enjoy change. So for me, it's, but you have to accept that whatever you're doing, you may have to adjust it next week. That even if you thought you had it all figured out, you may have missed a thing. And so I think being as open-minded as possible and as flexible as possible, as long as you stick to your core design principles, right? If those are supposed to stand the test of time, then you're fine. So I had a few things non-negotiable and everything else I could adjust. That was and I told the team as well. I said, there's a few things that have to happen. For example, it all has to be about customer value. We have to accommodate for all partner types. So we had a couple of principles, like it has to be simpler, but everything else was always open for adjusting until the last minute, until the point of no return, right? Like as it goes into the system or the IT requirement. But yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it's very naive to think that you can do anything at all in today's environment that is not having that built-in agility test.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then I think you mentioned that the program now is more agile than the previous one. And is that as a result of, setting that expectation that things will change, but that you'll always adhere to certain principles? Is it about building in additional touch points and feedback, constantly over time? Just wondering what that looks like. So for people who want to build something that is more responsive and agile as a program, even after it's launched.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the framework itself, so we're adjusting every 6 months. It's very data insights driven. So we are able to learn from it and adjust and feedback loop, and we will continue. Because the beautiful thing also I personally find is that because we went into this very deliberate co-design, we had very strong relationships with our partners already, but we built communities, and those communities became quite robust. One of our most robust community is what we call POAP, which is a Global Partner Operations Advisory Board. It has our top 75, 77 partners across the globe, and they've been an active member and part of this all throughout. And we have a WebEx space, which is a community chat, if you want, and that space is active every hour, 24 hours, because of the time zones, all week, all month, all the time. And so we have built in very robust community is probably the right word, that allows us to keep working and evolving and adjusting going forward as well.
That's wonderful. Great. So I know we're running short on time. I did want to ask one more question just in terms of internal alignment, which is one of the biggest challenges, I think, with transformation. Can
Yes.
you tell me anything about, okay, two things. So how did you maintain internal alignment with your team that was delivering on the transformation? And then how did you, manage that alignment with the executives, other executives in the organization? And maybe just like a practice or two, from each.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because indeed I think it's the hardest part, right? And we touched on it in the beginning also, because priorities change, executives change as well, right? So
Yes,
there's a constant change, and you're driving something that typically needs time. I mean, and so because it needs time, it typically takes, I guess in large enterprise, it typically takes more than a year or 2 years. And so by definition, leaders may change, priorities change, etc. But to talk about the first, in terms of my own, because I had built, we have my own organization, but then the community, let's say that the internal community that built this were people, of course, a lot of people in my own organization, but also outside in operations, in IT, across the partner organization, etc. I think we had an operating model where we would spend 2 hours a week. On Tuesday, it was what we call an inform hour, so we would debate proposals, and on Thursday, it was a decide hour, so we would decide proposals. And so those calls would be attended by 40, 50 people that probably knew most, like the experts on anything that we were building. And so that was a very vibrant community. And we had, again, these WebEx spaces where people would be asking. So we had a quite active community that was in almost daily contact, and then twice a week. So there's a bit about that, about keeping it alive and keeping it very engaging. And then I would say the culture, that's my personal view, would be worthwhile to ask them also, but the culture we created, it was very open. So we would always listen to everybody. So everybody had a voice, everybody had a say. We would also make jokes, it was always high pressure, high stress environment, of course, because always deadlines and things going wrong and lots of things, they never go exactly, because by definition it's all hard and challenging, and budgets weren't there and then they were there, and then, lots of things. So, but we had a lot of fun as well. We would, yeah, I don't know. I think we had a culture, a very open culture, work really hard, but also a lot of sense of humor and making fun and enjoying each other. And we celebrated also these milestone moments. I think you said something also about, marking. You need to mark milestones and celebrate the milestones. Otherwise, you risk, and one of our very senior executives gave me that advice also a few months ago. She said, make sure you mark achievements, so that it's important for your team, but it's also important for the company that you can declare success, right? Even it's not finished right now, I'm still delivering on components of Cisco 360, but we've launched, and that's marked as a milestone and as a successful milestone. I think that's important. And then on the executive alignment, I think constantly going back. It's not because they agreed to something 3 months ago that they're still agreeing to the same now. And so constantly circle back and constantly stay in a dialogue. And again, it went a little bit hot and cold because of other priorities or other concerns, and you have to go with that. And again, this whole piece around being fearless and fierce and determined is important, because if you are too emotional about those things, then you may possibly give up or get disillusioned, and then you won't achieve it, right? You have to stick to it.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Well, it's been such a great conversation, and I have a sense of what you've gone through just from my own experiences, but it helps me to appreciate, like, really everything that you've led over at Cisco. So it's very exciting. And how was the launch? You said it was almost like no news because everyone kind
Yeah,
of knew
yeah,
about
it
it,
was.
but it must be a relief for the
Yeah.
team. They must be happy.
Yes, yes, yes. So we were very happy. Yeah, everything was from an operational point of view, which was the importance of the launch. It went very smoothly. So we were very happy about that. And then from a market response, there was lots of response, positive response and feedback from the partners, from Cisco, from analysts, from press, etc. So that was really exciting. And so now it's like we're in run the business mode. So it's really nice. So of course, we have lots of things to address and to still build and still do, and we'll continue to collect feedback, but we've passed a major milestone, yes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much to take away from this episode. I really enjoyed the conversation, and it's been very inspiring, and I think it'll be inspiring for many others as well. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope we can continue to learn from your experience, however you express it. If you're going to write a book about it, whatever you're going to do, come back and let
Yeah.
us know. And congratulations on your success.
No, thank you so much, Amy. A pleasure.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Wired for Change. Please do subscribe and follow us, and let us know what you'd like to learn about when it comes to transformation. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Bye bye.